Over the past century, the United States has gotten involved in its fair share of Middle Eastern affairs. In 1991, America again found itself in the middle of an armed clash, this time between Saddam Hussein's Iraq and its neighbor Kuwait, in what would become known as the Persian Gulf War. Here are 5 points you should know to better understand this conflict. Few people would have called Saddam Hussein a stable leader. From the start of his reign in 1979, he ruled with an iron and often reckless fist. In 1990, Saddam sought to acquire Kuwait's vast oil reserves. Publicly, he justified the invasion by claiming that Kuwait belonged to Iraq in the first place and had been unfairly carved out as a separate country by the League of Nations. However, Kuwait actually became independent before Iraq's sovereignty, making his thinly veiled argument ridiculous. Either way, Saddam seized Kuwait on August 8, 1990, causing an international uproar, with the United States being the loudest voice.
The United States strongly condemns the Iraqi military invasion of Kuwait.
Soon after the invasion, the United Nations Security Council declared that if Saddam's forces did not withdraw from Kuwait by January 15, 1991, military force would be used. You can guess what happened. On January 16th, the offensive against the Iraqi army began, fought by a broad coalition of armed forces from the United States, United Kingdom, France, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, among many others. The first stage of the Gulf War was named Operation Desert Shield, which actually began before the international coalition was brought together. When Saddam first invaded Kuwait, the United States rushed troops into Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, to prevent a possible attack. But after the Security Council's declaration of war, it became the American force that would invade Kuwait. The main phase of the war was codenamed Operation Desert Storm, which began on the morning of January 17, 1991. Desert Storm was a massive bombing campaign targeting Iraqi aircraft, anti-air defenses, oil refineries, communication lines, weapon factories, bridges, and roads using the latest American military technology, including stealth bombers, cruise missiles, and smart bombs. After a month of Desert Storm, the coalition aimed to finish the job. The coalition's ground offensive, known as Operation Desert Sabre, began on February 24, 1991. By February 28th, the war was over.
And as president, I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
In 4 days, the U.S.-led forces retook Kuwait's capital and forced the entire Iraqi army into retreat. In all, Iraq lost somewhere around 30,000 soldiers, while America and its allies only lost 292 total. The Persian Gulf War was an easy and lopsided victory for the United States, but not one without serious consequences. President George H.W. Bush decided not to depose Saddam Hussein, as he didn't believe regime change would be popular with America's allies. In the wake of the war, Kurdish and Shiite Iraqis rose up against Saddam, who in turn brutally crushed their rebellions. After the UN accused him of using chemical weapons against his own civilians, Saddam was forced to allow UN inspectors into Iraq. He barred the inspectors in 1997, and from then on, it became the United States' goal to remove Saddam from power. This snowballed into the US invasion of Iraq and Saddam Hussein's capture by American forces in 2003. He was tried, convicted, and executed by the new Iraqi government in 2006.
Young people in large numbers came out and joined what became known as the Red Guards. These largely terroristic organizations were used to publicly humiliate, assault, and in some cases, even murder political enemies of Mao and the Communist Party.